Dr. Chris Hendriksz, thank you for agreeing to have an interview with us. IGA is doing the impact report, and this is a part of it, talking about how we cooperate with different organizations and different people so that we can make a bigger impact and support more people in the Gaucher community globally. You started to cooperate with IGA probably when it was European Gaucher Alliance, and your organization, A Rare Cause, was then FIMCA. So, how about giving us a flashback and tell us how everything started?
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity to share with you. This is quite a long story because I knew the Gaucher Association in England because I functioned as a medical doctor in England. And what happened there is, of course, I get to know Tanya very well. And then we started our own company in 2015, which was FIMCA Medical, which is a family company, and the letters is all the family members. So if everybody always wonders. But basically, we started that, and the first thing is we wanted to do is we provide medical education to low and middle income countries and see how we can facilitate that. And we wanted to have a master class first. And as Gaucher disease is the commonest of the lysosomal storage disorders, we wanted to have a master class in South Africa. At that stage, we linked it to the first ever RareX meeting, which was held in South Africa. And wonderfully, the European Gaucher Alliance, which it was called at that stage, agreed to help fund the master class we had. And that was in 2016. So we started working our first meeting in Africa in 2016. And I'm trying to recall, my memory won't be so good, but from memory, I think there were about 14 African countries present. And basically, our very good friend, Professor Greg Pastoris, came out as well to help us. So we had this wonderful interaction with these people, teaching them about Gaucher, making the awareness. And that was our first interaction. And from then, we kind of set up the beginning of a lifelong relationship, I think is the best way to call it, between the two organizations, because we found we have a lot of mutual goals and we can benefit from each other in different ways. So the company then started we had 1 to 2 events every year in low and middle income countries, and where we would invite multiple different groups of people together. So I will not bore you with all the details. I think this is just the intro to tell you where we started together. And the other thing, just to add in there, and unfortunately, like many other companies, our company was destroyed by the COVID pandemic. But we promised our doctors and our families and patient organizations we would never leave them alone. So to continue this work, we set up a rare cause to continue the work, which is our non-profit, and it's so non-profit that it's got no income.
Yeah, we can understand the fundraising is never easy, and we have a lot of volunteers helping out. I was amazed to see how many people reached out to us and how many people actually remember the first master classes that you were doing in South Africa, in Botswana. So, people from Kenya remember, people from Nigeria. They're all like coming together and saying, yeah, we started something and let's continue doing that. Let's work more, let's support the patients. The diagnosis is still a problem, and I think everybody is grateful that the rare cause is still helping out in the diagnosis part, not just for Gaucher disease but also for other lysosomal storage diseases. And it's amazing that we can gather 1,000 people in a webinar listening to how to recognize symptoms, who to contact to get the diagnosis, how to get the process faster, how to apply for humanitarian aid. There are all these challenges that are just piling up. I see IGA and IRC still standing together and getting more partners in, the International Working Group on Gaucher disease, the metabolic support from UK, and then many other organizations who want to do more, who want to support more. What makes me happy as a part of IGA is that I can see all the enthusiasm in the doctors and patients organizations in Africa, in the different countries, that they are really trying to support the families. So what would you say after all these years? What is the biggest challenge that you encounter in Africa?
I think Africa is a very special place. Of course, I was born in the subcontinent, so for me, it's my bias. And I think people have got a perception of Africa, which is sometimes not as good as it should be. And the biggest challenge is that people don't think that the African people can achieve anything. They think it is a continent of corruption and nothing ever happens. What they don't know is there's a wonderful lot of people who works incredibly hard with very limited facilities to get things done. And on the points that you've made there, you know, we started off this project because it's Gaucher disease, which is wonderful because that's the collaboration we started. But it opened up the door for us first to start a project to connect African countries to at least be able to test for 6 lysosomal storage disorders. But that's never enough. We need to expand. But unless you can do something small in the beginning, you can't expand. And the biggest challenge we're facing in Africa is that nobody believes we can be a success, number one. And number two is that everybody believes we're not good enough to do it inside the continent. Everybody wants to help us, but outside of the continent. And we are very much against that. And that's what we really love working with the IGA, because from the word, the IGA understood that concept that we had. We need to develop service and things inside the subcontinent. It's not a factor. We know we can send samples to other countries who would be grateful to help, but that does not help the community. It doesn't create sustainability. It doesn't increase the local knowledge. So we really need to work on, and those are the challenges that people need to just start believing we can do it, but things are slow, not because people are not doing things, because things are more complex than in the developed world.
Definitely. And here I think we should mention the Africa Roadmap project that we started working some time ago. It goes slowly, as you said, but you can see that a lot of people are signing up. And they see that it can be a future, not just for lysosomal storage diseases, not just for Gaucher disease, but also a future for rare diseases.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think it's one of the projects that I'm personally are the proudest of is our Africa Roadmap project, because basically, to give you a sense, as Vesna's mentioned, together with the IDA, we've had 2 events in Botswana, we've had 1 event in South Africa. That has built as a core network of people together. So when we had a virtual advisory board to see what are the real issues, they shared with us what are the issues, and we tackled this. And again, we had the wonderful support from the Susan Lewis Memorial Fund, and we actually, in the IGA, we actually had a meeting where we brought the laboratory personnel and the clinicians to the laboratory in Potchefstroom and taught them and let them see how the machinery works. How do you collect samples correctly? How do you make the process work? And we then send them out, and then we connect them to a local patient organization. So you've got this idea that when a patient comes to a doctor, the doctor knows he can ask the patient organization, how can I get help? Or if the patient organization gets the first call, they can contact the doctor and say, listen, we know how you can get help. And this is the start of this Africa roadmap, which we have. I usually say we've got 8 countries connected, but every time I count, it's not really 8. And we have more and more coming on board. And we're very excited to have Ethiopia coming on board soon. Namibia has expressed the view to come on board as well. And there are multiple others that will come. I think the thing which is hampering that development at the moment is we are getting samples in. I need to say that. And we have asked our clinicians and patient organizations to be very biased to make sure in the beginning we actually find patients. And I can report that we have a 50% success rate. Half of all the samples we get actually confirms a diagnosis. And the reason for creating this bias because the funding to support the program is incredibly small. So we have to show, firstly, it's worthwhile and the patients are there. And what needs to happen next is we need to find some partners that can help us expand these projects, make it bigger, and then expand it out to multiple different disorders. But what a wonderful legacy it is to think that a single disorder like Gaucher starts opening the doors to the other lysosomal storage disorders and then opens the doors to rare disease. And we've got some really exciting projects ongoing at the moment, but I'm pretty sure that may be a question coming up later.
Definitely, yes. I think the idea is that IGA and RC understand that things need to happen in Africa, just like you said. And I think we are different from others because we do have all the volunteers, we do have the trust between us, they do have the enthusiasm, and we all try our best to support the community that is growing inside of African countries. And recently we had this meeting of families and doctors in Kenya, and it was amazing to see that families from Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania met together. They talked to each other, and just connecting the patients meant a lot for them, as they did not have previous face-to-face meetings. It was not possible coming from different parts of the country, and the transport, of course, the travel is not never easy. And this was a start of a regional cooperation. It's not always possible, as we see it, not just in Africa, in many other parts of the world, regional cooperation is not easy. But when you connect the right people, somehow the puzzle gets itself together, and then you can see a bigger picture and you can see what you do. And one of the good things is that if previously we were only reactive, just collecting humanitarian aid requests, trying to support treatment, as you said, trying to diagnose patients by sending samples around the world. Now we are becoming proactive. We are starting to build something, and to make a stronger community in different African countries, so they can make a network and work together, and of course build a better future. So maybe you can tell us a bit about what do you expect about the future.
Oh, I'm very positive about the future and what you've talked about connecting. So we also have, just for the interest, so we've got a project running in South Africa called UNGWE, which is a program for undiagnosed patients, and it runs a CME program on rare diseases every week. And we've managed to bring our doctors from the Africa roadmap into that as well, and the laboratory people. So they've got access, and that's the main key here, is connecting different local things together to expand what there is. So they are now in the situation that they have a continuous medical education. Now our next challenge comes in. The IGA has very kindly said, but can we set up genetic testing for Africa? And at first sight, this sounds like very simple. Oh, we can just send it. What we then realized is actually sending and finding genetic material that is appropriate is not that easy in Africa. People say you just take a blood sample. It is not that simple. And this will be a great example of another way that we work together and also bring other people in. So once we realized we want to set up the project, the first thing the people told us, but we never get quality DNA. So yes, we can set up the testing, but it's going to be worthless. So I reached out to some other partners, and they've agreed to do a project for us for free as a pilot to see if we can determine the quality of DNA in Africa. But then I needed somewhere to start. I need a pilot project. So where do I go? I immediately go to Roslyn, who is part of the IGA workers on the ground, but she also has a much bigger remit. She's also the rare disease organization in Kenya. And together with Trudy, they are forced to be reckoned with. And what I said to them, between of you, can you find us a patient in which it will be useful to try and do a set of trios So it's a set of DNA which comes from both the parents and the child, which will give us multiple samples to see, can we get quality DNA from Kenya to South Africa? Because that is the biggest challenge, is it's not that easy to get DNA in a state that it's usable, that it can be analyzed. So we're doing that little project, but it shows again how the IGA was the kind of connecting point. It pulled somebody else in, and now we have another partner in Africa, which is a laboratory. And together, if we then show which type of DNA is the best. Now, I don't want to be technical, but I think it's really important. Most of the samples in Africa can only be sent on dried blood spot cards. So these are little filter paper cards, and you drop blood on them. The problem is the DNA you get from that is incredibly poor. You can't really use them. So we need another way to transport DNA. We can do blood samples, which we're going to do, and extract the DNA, and maybe we need to teach each and every local lab to do that. But there may be simpler ways. The simpler ways is collecting what's called buccal DNA. So those are swabs from the inside of the mouth. So we're going to use that as well as the pilot. And there are new devices which people are not aware. And these are devices that collect blood by themselves. You basically put them on your arm. They will connect. They will take the exact blood sample into a container and seal it. Now we think those samples may stay stable longer than samples which are drawn in a clinic. And we're going to send those samples as well from Kenya and see, because that solves some of our problems. Because once we know we can do it in Kenya, we know we can do it from any country in Africa. And then once we've set up the genetics for Gaucher, we know firstly we can get samples from anywhere in Africa and do the DNA. The next step would be to try and find multiple sites to do this. But we all know DNA equipment is incredibly expensive. And again, yeah, I've got a partner now who is saying they are busy working with an AI model where you will have a local small DNA machine and centrally it will then analyze all the data. So there's a lot of hope. So I'm very excited about the future. And I do believe that DNA is most probably going to be the future for African diagnostics, but it brings a huge amount of problems because the mutations are not common. So we're going to need to work out all the different mutations. We already know Gaucher mutations some are similar, some are very different. So there's a lot of work, but again, I believe in the team and the support we get. And that's the nice thing as well. When we're in our little world and we get stuck, we go back to IGA and say, listen, you've got all the experts. Bring us in. Can somebody help us with the DNA? Can somebody help us? And that's why we've had so many wonderful, successful events together.
We do in Africa. You also helped us and supported us with projects in Sri Lanka, which is another part of the world in South Asia. And I think this is another part when we show that cooperation doesn't have to be limited, and it doesn't have to be just in one place. It can be global, depending on what we work on, what are the activities, and what are the people needed, and the expertise and knowledge needed for something to happen, for some actions to take on in the future and support more patients and doctors in the rare disease community. So how did you get into Sri Lanka?
Oh, well, that's a fascinating question and so interesting. It shows how things are connected. So I was contacted actually by another patient organization, Metabolic Support UK, saying that they are busy supporting people in Sri Lanka to get a newborn screening program, but they may need some support in building a registry. And they've heard that the IGA is already involved in trying to reach out and build a registry in Sri Lanka. So I said, that's the ideal thing because we love working with the IGA because we've got the same mindset of getting things done and getting things done locally. So we all got connected. And then the question I first asked was actually, the answer I got was frightening because I realized that there are very limited medical notes either at hospital or held by patients in Sri Lanka. So what was really important is that we wanted to see, can we develop a patient registry from the beginning, but that can also help patients have some medical records, which they can keep with them. And of course, because this is not hospital help. It is a question of how do we manage to get it and how can we collect it and make this sustainable. Now, I was in the fortunate position, I was in the early stages of working with a startup company in AI, Symmetry ML, and we worked with them, and I asked them, would you help me build a registry in Sri Lanka? Their first response was, we're not really sure, but we can help. We can need your help in many other areas. So I said, that's not how I work. If you build the registry for us for free in Sri Lanka, I'm very happy to support you and see how can we connect multiple things and make projects better. So what is different to this is what we call the federated AI process, which means it's got the ability that data never leaves the patient or the site where it is collected. And it is then converted into a special, when we talk about it, we talk about the special source, which is called a DEM, a DEM. And then once you've got the DEMs, you can move them around and multiple people can collaborate on this. And our view and our hope is that once we've got the registry in Sri Lanka done and dusted, this could be rolled out to the African continent as well. People can use that same platform and people can then start connecting. And ideally, patients will then be able to see, how do I track to a different patient? So I've got, and we're talking Gaucher. So if I've got Gaucher disease and I'm on no treatment, how does my life compare to somebody who is in the United States, who's on treatment, or in another country? Or let's say, because you're on the call, Vesna, Serbia does not have as good medical services, from what I understand, as the US, but it's much better than most places in Africa. So how does somebody with Gaucher in Serbia compare to me in Africa? And that's the whole idea. And with a federated AI model, this will be possible. And that's where we hope to go in the future, that we can actually work together for data capturing, but ultimately also have the ability that patients can track themselves. And also the question which is always coming up, so I'll answer it up front, yes, but who makes the money? And our view on this model is developed in what we say is profit sharing, meaning the patient organizations and the patients has to directly benefit when they share data. And that's the way we're working on. Everybody tells us this is a moonshot, but we've been on Mars a few times, so we're very happy to aim for the moon.
Thank you very much for this interview. I think it will be something very interesting for the member organizations to hear, but also for our supporters. And who knows, probably another organization who will cooperate with us on many more projects in the future. I think the more we talk about what we do, the more people are connecting with us and the more work we get to do in the future. It's good that everything is based on cooperation, and a lot of it is based of doing it for free, doing it voluntarily, and this shows that yes, we can build a better world for the Gaucher community, but also for the rare disease community.
I fully agree. Thank you.